Mr. Cross, we're going to give him a full hour, but he's going to talk and then hopefully we'll have back and forth. So go ahead, Rick.
Thank you, Sam. I really appreciate the opportunity, and believe me, I'm not going to be talking for an hour right now. But we've been talking about what's happened since the election. We didn't believe Donald Trump could win. Certainly not after January 6th. And we're fighters. We're retired. You know, Karen isn't, but I'm semi-retired. But when it comes to life, you get to retire when you die. Life's a privilege, and you got to fight till the end. We became familiar with the book during the election cycle when Donald Trump said he didn't know anything about it, which we knew was flat untrue. So Karen told me we better get the book and read it. We believe the book's an essential part of Trump's agenda, that it's being implemented at an unprecedented rate. But we also believe that when you look at it, it's in totality, if it's properly explained, many people, including many people who voted for Donald Trump, would not want what this book recommends to be put into effect. Karen and I have a 40-year history with the Heritage Foundation. In 1985 in Fairbanks, Alaska, after a 2-year process, our school district, which I was the superintendent, adopted a textbook called Holt Impressions, and we selected the Canadian edition. And the reason that we did that was because a significant part of the population of our school district were Eskimos and Alaska Natives. And we thought the stories in the Canadian edition most closely aligned. We consulted the Fairbanks Native Association, the Alaska Library Association, the Alaska Federation of Natives, and every single one of our elementary teachers. There's 1,000 teachers in the Fairbanks North Starborough School District, had input and were very enthusiastic about this text. The Heritage Foundation and a group called Focus on the Family out of California got wind of this book and decided that it was witchcraft, that it taught devil worship, and that the native stories were pagan. They sent people to Fairbanks that I would describe as modern-day domestic terrorists. They got 2 of the church. Is something? If people have their mics on, would they mute them, please? After a long process, including an all-night meeting, our school board chose to adopt the textbook without respect to what the Heritage Foundation had to say about it. During the process, though, you should know that we received calls in the middle of the night telling us what color snowsuits our elementary age children had on the playground, and other teachers were similarly terrorized. We had to obtain security. But we did adopt the textbook. But here's what happened. What happened was when I went to the classrooms to talk to the teachers about it, they were afraid to use it. They had been intimidated and were afraid to use it. The parents were upset and concerned. And I then was asked by the governor to go to Juneau. I ran the State Department of Education there. And when I came back to Fairbanks and I asked the superintendent to replace me what happened to the books, he told me he had sold them on the used market, and many of them had never been taken out of the boxes in which they were shipped. These people will go through glass to get what they want, and they will stop at nothing. And so when we heard that mandate for leadership was going to be the guide for Donald Trump's agenda, even though he was denying it, we decided that we needed to get it. So here's what we did. this is the book. It's out of print now, and that's why you have to use a PDF to read it. But we started on January 20th monitoring the Federal Register, whitehouse.gov, and any other source we could get of what was happening in any of the agencies. And we would take the language that was in the Federal Register or in Donald Trump's executive orders, and we would see if we could tie them to this book. You can see that in the book, there's a number of tabs, and the tabs are all numbered, and everywhere that the number of the tab is tied to a spreadsheet that we made. You can't read it, but what that spreadsheet does is tie that tab to the Federal Register, the whitehouse.gov site to do the comparison to see whether, our first objective was, is this the book? Is this really the plan? And it became so obvious that it was, we had to stop putting tabs in, because just for example, listing on eliminating the DEI, which to us is civil rights and social justice. Just the elimination of that would take over 100 tabs in this book, because this book is advocating for it in every chapter. So we finally figured out we'd have a tab on every page and we wouldn't be able to turn the pages. So we stopped putting the tabs in. The conclusion, I think, is obvious. No reasonable person could ever argue that this isn't an essential part of Donald Trump's agenda. And the other thing that is that the rate at which it is being implemented is shocking, but it's also extremely impressive. And that's why I make the argument that I think we need to respect this book. This book has a plan, and I don't know if there's any time in our history where any administration that has come in with such a well-organized agenda. This book has been in the Heritage Foundation has been in the works for 60 years. They were very instrumental when Ronald Reagan was president. They began working, the book was published in 23, but they began working on it shortly after January 6th. There isn't any question that it isn't the agenda, and therefore needs to be looked at. And as despicable as it is, I think the part of it of needing to be respected is critically important. I use the Ohio State football team. A player on the Ohio State football team was asked whether or not he hated Michigan. And he was told, he said, that's not a strong enough word. We despise Michigan. We can't even say the name. That doesn't mean he didn't watch hundreds of hours of Michigan games. That doesn't mean his coaches didn't analyze everything that Michigan did. So you can fear something, and you can also respect it. And that's what I think we need to do as we're working with this book. The rate at what is being implemented is just plain shocking. And some days, Karen and I get despondent, and we wonder whether or not we're too late. But here's where we are with it, and that is that Karen and I like to debate, and I call it argument, she calls it a discussion. but at any rate, we're running out of gas because we've reached the same conclusions that we're no longer in a position where we can challenge one another. So we just, are kind of quiet. We need other people to help us if we're making any sense at all. If we make any sense to you at all, we need other people to help us to frame the argument, because we believe strongly. We're both from working class neighborhoods in Detroit, union people. And we know that a whole lot of people that we grew up with, some of whom we still know, voted for Donald Trump, lots of them. But we also know that they are reasonable people and that we have had a hard time coming to respect people who voted for Donald Trump. But somehow, I think for some of them anyway, we're going to have to, because we're absolutely convinced, without a doubt, that there is an argument. And there are things that can be said. There are ways that this book could be explained and the impact of this book could be explained that would make those people realize that is not what they want for their life and what they want for their life. The reason we appreciate the opportunity for what you're affording us here is because, quite frankly, some days we wonder if it's only the indivisibles that are doing anything.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like other people are sitting on their hands. Actually, they're in shell shock and they just flat don't know what to do. Well, we don't know what to do either, but we know that we need to keep working on it every single day and that we need to broaden our thinking so that we can come together, show some respect for our fellow citizens, and come up with arguments that would help make people realize that this is not what we want in this country. I mean, I don't want to be over dramatic with it, but not only will it dramatically change our culture, but it will change our ability to speak freely without fear, and and it fundamentally change the way our government has operated and we expect it to operate. So we don't really know what the next steps ought to be in order to try to frame an argument that can convince people that we're on the wrong track and that we need to get on a good track, and we're stuck with that. And that's why we so deeply appreciate the fact that, you know, you're willing to spend an hour with us tonight. So with that, that's, unless Karen wants to add something.
Not really, not at the moment.
But that's our pitch. And
You know what, can I just jump in right away? Because
sure.
I was just at a workshop and they were talking about the most impactful way to change people's minds, and it is by telling stories. The story you just told about the book in Alaska, that needs to be written up or videoed and put on a lot of different streams. When people hear that, I think that would be incredibly moving. And then if we just put a few little points from Project 2025 in with it, I think that would be incredibly powerful. You know, just what they're doing to the education. Nancy Flanagan, any thoughts about that?
Yes, that's my thought. Yeah. What's the percentage? Something like 50% of all people in this country get their news from social media. So if that's where people are getting their news, maybe that's where we need to put some things that give them some things to think about.
I think that story would be great on Rachel Maddow. I mean, I think that's a story that's so horrifying that it needs to see a lot more daylight. And it was I mean, as I was reading the book today, my head was exploding, thinking like, yikes, this is happening left and right. Oh, and here goes unions, here goes this, here goes, you know, it was like, oh my gosh. And your story, I thought, just was so powerful. So let's hear from other folks. What does everybody else think about that idea?
It's Doug, and
Okay.
I'm going to disagree only because it's ancient history. The story's a good story, but I think intimidation of law firms today, and intimidation in every place around the country that we can identify where people are scared is the message. what the Heritage Foundation did 30 years ago is not nearly as important as how many people today feel intimidated. So I like the idea of stories, but I think we need to find some more contemporary stories to use.
Okay, other folks? Rick?
Hey, this is
But the
Robert
what?
Mary.
Oh, here's Rob.
Yeah, so Alyssa Slotkin on her town hall talked about needing to tell stories, and at the Cracker Barrel in Northport just last week, we talked about that, right, Doug? Where we need to share stories. I think, and Mary can speak for her, she was actually youth media director at WDIY and in news as well. And she was there the morning of 9/11, as a matter of fact, and reporting that. But the point I was gonna make is, let's get the message out. My offer is to help effective communications. There's the need to meet people and to listen and to meet people where they are and to engage in dialogue and be diligent in that, and respectful, even in the face of not being respectful. So, everybody here should endeavor to get on Blue Sky. Mary, did you have anything to add?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I thought about it, Rick, was that it maybe happened a while ago, but their whole stand is we're the moral people. And if we can demonstrate that they're not the moral people, which I thought your story did so beautifully, I think that's still worth it. But let's hear from other folks. Rick?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to say to Doug, who is a friend of mine, is that, are we muted? No.
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay, is that coincidentally, when I assumed the superintendency in Fairbanks, Alaska, I hired a law firm named Perkins Coie. And they were our lawyers.
Stars.
And it turns out that my nephew is a partner of Perkins Coie, and I wrote him yesterday because I was concerned about what his life is like and what's going on in Perkins Coie. And he sent me information, some of which, some of it's personal, but some of it's I'm willing to share. But basically, what the position Perkins Coie is taking right now is they're staying quiet because they're under court decrees, and they have to conform with the rules that the court has set in order in order to maintain the temporary injunction they received. He did give me a website to go to that reports all the filings that Perkins Coie has made, and I will somehow get the link to that website to you if you're interested.
Great. Mickey, what did you want to say?
Well, I want to defer to Tom Peterson because he literally put his hand up first. I just
Oh,
used
okay, I didn't see. Go
the,
ahead, Tom. Yeah,
Zoom mechanism.
okay.
I would say that the story is still valid even if it is 30 years old, because there's a lot of people I have spoken to that are thinking the Heritage Foundation is a recent group, and we need to show them that no, this has been going on for a long time. We need to build a foundation to stand on to show that this is, that you can read other books, John Wayne, what was it?
Jesus and John.
Jesus and John Wayne is a book by a professor down at Holland at university who talks about the evangelical wing of the Heritage Foundation and how they created the situation we're in today, starting 60 years ago. And we need to show that and prove to people that we're not just screaming in the night, that this is really a threat that has been going on for years.
Thanks, Tom. Mickey?
So, Tom, I'm going to echo a couple of things that Tom just said and kind of respond to the discussion about whether something that's 30 years old is current. I think one of the through lines of the Heritage Foundation is that it's really about power, and their interest in governing doesn't really exist. And that what we're struggling with, in a way, is a concern for people for whom power is the end game. And so I don't know exactly how to address that other than to tell stories. I think the country has an interesting story to offer in that one of the concerns of the founders had to do with the tyranny of the majority. They're using language about having a mandate, but it seems to translate into the idea that we got more votes, so we can do anything we want. And the other thing I wanted to say, I think it's difficult to tell stories that reach people who I guess, Ken, I'm kind of responding to you, or I think it's Ken, I'm responding to the comments that were made about taking this seriously. I do take it seriously, but I struggle a little bit because I feel like I'm dealing with people who are in a very different cognitive space. And that while we may be speaking the same language, English, we're not interpreting it at all in the same way. And so not only telling stories, but I think telling stories in which we're challenging some of the ways people have become comfortable in talking about the world. It surprises me a little bit. One last thing. When I was growing up, we talked a lot about being in a melting pot, not about getting rid of everybody who wasn't like us, but about learning from each other in some ways. And I think that that's an oversimplification because there was potentially a assumption that everybody would become like a particular kind of person. But I do think we can ask about what happened to the melting pot concept in the current environment, because that seems to me to be something that resonates with people's memories and thinking about themselves, but also challenges the current environment and the situation, the political situation of the moment.
Okay, we're gonna have Rob and then Jeannie.
Yeah, hey, just real quick on the point, I agree with everything everyone said. So remember what Al Green did during the joint session? He stood up and said, "You do not have a mandate." And the reality is 2/3 of Americans of voting age did not vote for Trump. 1/3 voted for Trump, 1/3 voted for Harris, a small percentage voted, 1% voted independent, and the balance did not vote. And we just have to make sure that we get those words out. That's what I wanted to share, because the fact is we all have a lot to say. We're all hurting. We're all being hurt. We don't suffer fools, but we're suffering under fools. And we have to just be effective in how we interact with people. Thank you.
Okay, Jeannie?
I guess I'm thinking about the scale of this, but one of the important things to consider when you're trying to send a message is who you're trying to send it to. So who needs to hear the message? And Sam, I love your idea of being on Rachel Maddow because I love the national scale, but the people who listen to Rachel Maddow don't need the story. They have the story. Who needs to hear the story? We need to figure out who are we talking to and what they care about and go from there. And then I'm also looking at well, what's inspiring the people who are supporting Trump? Memes. It's biting, sharp, quick, mocking memes. And there's absolutely no reason why our side can't be doing the same thing. I also think that this side also needs a vision. So it's beautiful that this book has been created, but I haven't seen anything like a fraction of this from the opposition. Like there's absolutely no vision. And all that we have is the past. And oh, this is what they did in the past. This is what they did in the past. They're so terrible. They're so terrible. They're so terrible. You know, and all the things that are bringing brought up that are terrible. They are terrible. They are terrible. Like I don't agree with them either. So what's the vision? We just absolutely need a vision, not just opposition.
Yeah, Jane sent me something. Jane, do you want to talk about what you found that was kind of a vision?
Was it a vision?
Yeah, you sent me something that sounds
Well,
like a progressive
starting
vision. Yeah.
at some point last year, the is it the Center for American Policy, I believe, they were doing putting out emails regularly about the impacts of Project 2025, the hardcore contextual, you know, impacts that we can all see. The other one, Sam, I think I sent you, I hope, which is even better. It's kind of like the people's explanation. It's like the synopsis, right, of the Cliff Notes of Project 2025. It's put out by Democracy Forward, and that's also a good one. But going back to stories, I think the audience is crucial. Like, who are you writing for and to? But the personal stories are, I mean, I just think they're really important. The personal, the local, and you know, how is it impacting your county or your community, and how is it impacting you? I just think that's really important because it's really clear. Facts don't mean anything to a lot of people, but so you got to just go with the gut. And I think this story from 40 years ago, yeah, this is who the heritage people are, and yeah, they've been doing it for a long time. They're not joking around. This is not like crying wolf or screaming fire or whatever. You know, I think you can totally weave it in. Just last week in Traverse City, you know, they had a challenge about a book in the library. You know, I mean, this stuff is happening every day all over the place. So just connect the dots for people, I guess.
Well, and also in the reading that we did for today, so much of what I was reading, while it seemed to be pro-family, was so not. And so that's why I was thinking, you know, with Rick's story, when they're claiming to be pro-family, when he's talking about, you know, they know what color snowsuit your kid is wearing on the playground, that does not seem really pro-family to me. You know, the fact that they want to make sure no state has any contraceptive devices or morning after pills, even the states that already have, you know, like Michigan, um, they're really evil bastards. And the more we can paint that picture of who the hell they are, they might have on the Superman cape, but underneath it, it's the devil. And so I think to make that story clear would be really good. I mean, even a meme like that. You know, I might have the Heritage Foundation crown, but who am I really? You know, Elon Musk. You know, they talk about, you know, the rich in what we're reading today and how we shouldn't be listening to the rich are the people that own corporations, and exactly who is running the government right now. So that seems crazy too. I'm sorry, Bronwyn. I'll shut up. Bronwyn, you go.
Ty's got his hand up.
I have my hand up, and you know, I'm fascinated by the conversation. I have a little book on my desk, and it's written by a philosopher named Professor Frankfurt, and it's got the sophisticated title of "On Bullshit." And he's a philosopher, and he talks about the difference between bullshit and lying. And I don't know how to do it, and we do need stories, but we got to get better at calling people out for misrepresenting the facts. And Professor Frankfurt says bullshit is deliberately misrepresenting the facts to fool people. And I think the other side does that a whole lot better than we do. And I don't know what the answer is, but we hear at the county commission meeting, at the township board meetings, at the Rotary Club, we hear all sorts of statements that are just so off base. And we got to pick and choose what we confront, but we have to get better at confronting the as Frankfurt would say, the bullshit.
I so agree. Bronwyn, and then Jane.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone's saying. I would emphasize what Jeannie said and the vision. I mean, when I read and actually, I mean, if you were part of the Democratic campaign, it ran on this is the boogeyman of Project 2025. And I think everyone went ahead and did a certain measure, or a lot of people did, of magical thinking. And so when you read this book and you kind of suspend your own thing and think, okay, I'm going to try to read this like a person who's a devotee of this vision, all of the definitions, what's family, what's, truth. I mean, everything has been turned around. And so what we need to stand for are the values that will speak to the people that were mentioned earlier, that you, Rick, were talking about, that you grew up with in working class neighborhoods in Detroit, and people all up and down the economic scale who said, oh, screw it, I'm going to vote for Trump because I'm so frustrated with everything. How do we find them, and how do we speak to them? And yes, it's stories, it's memes, it's it's challenging, but I think that that's part of it. And I think that calling them out as boogie people and so on, and saying it's bullshit is good, but we have to have a response with that, and here's the answering vision. And I think as more gets broken as fast as it's being broken, there are obviously more and more people going, wait a minute, I didn't vote for this exactly.
Jane?
Hi, sorry, I just have a couple of quick thoughts. Ty, in response to your calling out the bullshit, Mallory McMorrow's book came out today. So she may have a few pointers in there. The other thing is, these people they want white Christian nationalism. I mean, that's what this is about. Just another point about communicating and writing letters or however getting the information out. It's so important that we think of our words. Like, any of us might just start talking about, oh, if we don't do this, we're going to have an autocracy or something like that. And that sounds really clear to all of us, but you'd be amazed at how many smart people don't always see it. But to spell it out and make it specific, and rather than saying it's an autocracy, saying how is this specific act going to impact you or your community? And this is the kind of thing that Mary Rupert and I do all the time in our letters or work toward anyway. That's that.
One of the things I was thinking about, Ty, for our Leelanau County, is I was thinking about how will one of our commissioners, excuse me, I didn't mean to say his name. One of our commissioners is always saying, we shouldn't give money for housing or different things like that. And I was remembering the poor farm, and when it used to be in the 1800s, when there was just three guys, and there was a poor. They always talked about the poor. How are the poor doing? And I thought I would like to do a public comment where I say, when we started out and we had three people in the county, and they were called supervisors, I think. They would start their meetings with how are the poor doing, and they collected so much money to make sure, people had rent, or people had this, or people had that. And I thought, what a lovely thing to think about. They were actually thinking about the people in their county that needed the most, that they could actually help. And then the fact that they did the poor farm, and they did the poor farm on that Kirkbridge model of that work is meaningful. If you give people work and a place to stay, it's uplifting, and it actually was cheaper to have the poor farm than to have what they had had before. So I just thought it would be interesting to see if we could do more public comments about, okay, so this was a county we used to care about this in the beginning of our meetings. We thought about the people who lived here. We sure would like to see that continue. Any ideas about that?
I don't know how to put up little hearts or hands or any of that cool stuff y'all are doing. But but I would like to say that there are two big things, two big issues that we're not really talking about, or we touched on a little bit with regard to the Democrats not having a vision. That's huge. That's huge. We are as disparate as the MAGAs and the old school Republicans that we happen to get along with, that wanted to share and try to make everybody happy as best they could. They had a little different lens on it, but they were not extreme. We have the same extremes in our party. We have no coalescing in a central message. We just don't. And so that's why my personal opinion is that this book will give us the tools not only to frame our message, but to identify in any listening Republican, and I don't call MAGAs the listening Republicans because they're not. This is going to impact your life. This is going to hurt you. And if I remember when I was a kid growing up, we used to have there were mega church celebrations on TV all the time. Oral Roberts, heal. And when I was a kid, my brother and I made fun of it and then changed the channel. Well, my parents weren't tuning into those programs, but so a lot of us with our type of more broad inclusive thinking, we see a program like that and fast forward, who wants to listen to that? We got to listen to that. We have been listening, Rick and I have been purposely going over to Fox News or News Nation or something like that and hear what they are saying and how they, like several of you have touched on it, the perspective had completely shifted. I mean, you're looking, how are they seeing the same picture? It's like that old fable that Rick always refers to as the blind man and the elephant kind of thing. If you know that fable, it's a great one. Anyway, but I think not only do we identify our message using this book as a tool, not just grabbing on any other thing that happens to be our particular passion, but try to pull is it possible for the indivisibles to all come together and say the same message? I don't see anybody in Congress doing that. They're not doing it. Certainly the MAGA groups are. They're all like automatons in there, yesing everything. You can't even vet them. You can't even interview them. The Senate hearing, they can't even interview these people. They just all say the same thing, lockstep. It's obnoxious. It's sickening. So those aren't the people that you're going to get to listen to you, right? So anyway, two big things. We want to at least I would like to identify things that will, like, for example, Leelanau Township Library. Aaron Connolly posts on Facebook saying, I'm afraid we're going to lose our interlibrary funding thing. The huge, I don't remember the name of it, but and it's a fabulous tool. It's been around for a long time. And they're going to lose it. Well, well, I don't think that only Democrats and independents like to use the library. Come on. So anyway, that's what I have to say.
Well,
And-
Rob wants to organize the letter writing. I just saw in the chat. So that's cool, Rob. And what we could do, I was thinking we could also organize public comment at the Board of Commissioners meeting because unions is one of the things on the chopping block, and almost everybody that works at the county office is in a union, right, Ty? Yeah. So that would be interesting too, to see if they understood that, unions were something that was definitely on the list. And I'm sorry, Kathy has her hand up. Kathy, go ahead. You're muted.
I'm sorry, you can't hear what I'm thinking. A couple thoughts going through my head. Number one, I don't know about you guys, but I was brought up, if you can't say something nice, don't say it. And I think a lot of us had that same phrase given to us. So I find I'm getting better trying to do it in a nice and gentle, not confrontational way of telling people why I think something is wrong, even if it may not be nice to tell them that. And I think that's the problem with our Democratic Party, is because we've got so many diverse people in it versus the Republicans. I think they're more cohesive in the group of people that are in that party. And so it's hard for us to bring everybody back. But to me, I agree. The Democrat Party has been a bunch of wimps for a long, long time. We're all trying to be really nice and not confrontational and not say this is wrong. And we have got to Schumer, I am so furious at Schumer. The Republicans are not working with us. So why do we why do we allow them to keep moving the fence post to the right? It keeps moving to the right. We're ultra liberals now? No, we're not. We're conservative liberals.
Okay, let's think about our sphere of influence. We have no influence whatsoever on the Democratic Party. Our sphere of influence is Leelanau County. So,
but we have Democrats in Leelanau County.
Yeah, but that's not our objective. Our objective is to tell stories on those middle people in the county that maybe voted for Trump that we could get back. So are the people who didn't vote. So let's try to focus on stories like Rick's story that will show the morality of the people who claiming to have the moral high ground, but who really don't. So that seems to me to be the task, is to, okay, this is what morality really looks like. This is taking care of your neighbor. This is, but in a story form. We can't fix indivisibles, Democrats, Republicans. We can only work right here with the folks we have right here. So for us, we just want to learn tools that will help us be more effective.
We are a microcosm of the macrocosm.
Richard.
Sorry.
Richard.
Yeah.
Richard is muted.
Oh, Richard, did you want to say something?
He has his hand up.
Sam, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Ty, please.
We
Everybody.
we had an example in our neighborhood this week. The impact of one of the pages of Project 2025. A local farmer who was a very staunch Republican, Trumpster, in fact, who found out that after the new administration took over, the grant that had already been approved for her was canceled. She had already borrowed $250,000 as an advance. She's now worried about going into bankruptcy. Those are the kinds of stories I think we need to listen for, because what's happening in Washington and what's happening in our country is impacting our neighbors. And even some of our neighbors that didn't know what they were voting for when they voted, now are paying the price for it.
Agree. Yeah.
All right, I'm ready to talk.
Okay.
So I agree with Ty, what he just said. I think there are thousands, if not millions, of people suffering already from what Trump has already done, and Elon Musk. All these cuts, which in themselves amount to almost nothing to the federal budget. And yet it's inflicting a lot of pain to a lot of people everywhere in the country, even around the world. And I think there's so much to pay attention to that a lot of people who aren't touched by these things don't know. I mean, they don't know that the library isn't going to get funds. They don't know that museums are going to shut down, like at Michigan State. They just don't know all these things. And they don't know that research is getting cut because it's meaningless, except it's optics, so that Trump can say, well, I'm cutting the budget. I'm slashing the bureaucracy. Well, the reason the bureaucracy, well, it hasn't really grown, for one thing, for years, for decades. And people say, it's too big. And I would say, compared to what? And by the way, how do you know it's too big? What makes you say that? So and of course, as Musk points out, you can't really reduce the budget by $2 trillion without chopping off Social Security and or Medicare and or Medicaid. But what I think is we need a lot more money. We need to flood all communications. We need to be on social media with all these stories. I mean, it's great to go to that town hall meeting like we did last weekend and hear what so many people had to say about how they were personally affected. Like left holding the bag for $200,000 for money already spent while you waited for the grant and didn't get it. But we need to advertise these things. We need someone who's got an advertising background and or political campaign running. Maybe there are some in here already that I don't know about, but I think we need to get it on social. You shouldn't be able to turn around without seeing a story. Like, here's what Trump is doing. And that costs money. At least some of it does. And what else was I going to say? I didn't have my notes, but anyway, maybe I should stop there. But the other thing is that we need to publicize also that Trump lies. And this 2025 is extreme, and he denied knowing a thing about it. He lied. Maybe we should get a billboard saying, with the picture of 2025, and then, it's no good. I've never heard of it. And yet the introduction is the playbook for what he has done already and how he's really scarfing. Well, he cuts, $1 million grant here and there 1,000 times over. He is going after free speech, sending people out of the country almost who, for organizing a political protest and so on. So I think we need to magnify these messages to a degree in the media, which can't be ignored. So if you're driving down the road, you see a billboard, or if you're, looking at the headline news or on the paper when you walk by into the grocery store, we just need to be putting this stuff out all the time.
We can definitely, we have money. We could do a couple of billboards for sure. I don't know for how long, but we could do that. And we have some people that will advertise those, but I think you're right. We do need to get it out everywhere. And I saw another hand up. Mickey. And okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think one of the messages that I keep turning over in my own head is that he lied 30,000 times in his first administration. What'd you expect? Because I think people are surprised by things that are happening. And the other thing I wanted to say is, Sam, I love you dearly. We don't have a lot of money in the grand scheme of things.
I just mean Leelanau Indivisible has some money right now.
Yeah, no, I'm just kind of teasing you a little bit. I think the reality of what we can do as a group, if there are 500 people in Indivisible, we need to organize teams of people that will repost and comment on messaging that we put out on social media, because we don't have enough money to move the algorithms that allow messages to be seen. But if you have 20 or 30 or 40 people that are going to get on a Tuesday and say, this message came out and now I'm going to distribute it to a larger group, we don't necessarily need money to do that, but we do need some cooperation. And in my experience, and I spent 3.5 years developing a Facebook site in Minnesota for reliable health information to disseminate it. And $100 a pop, you could spend that every week for a year and not make a dent in the social media milieu. So I really think that we as people have power to make and share information and messages, and that's going to be more effective than just spending money and targeting a bunch of strangers at this point.
Okay, we have close to 700 members. Traverse has over 2,000 now, and we're getting new members every day. So maybe we need like a little sheet as a new member. Join us on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Watch our YouTubes. Rick?
Yeah, I really appreciate what Ty had to say, and Sam, what you've had to say about telling stories. Stories are the most effective way to make a point. And just for example, today, I haven't tracked it all down yet and figured it out, but huge cuts have just been announced for food that is being given to food banks. I mean, enormous cuts. And these cuts are going to affect our farmers, for one thing, because that food is purchased from the farmers. And it's obviously going to affect our food bank. And I agree with the idea that all, it was Tip O'Neill, right? All politics is local. And our real strength comes from what we can do locally. That doesn't mean we should disengage from the bigger picture, but we should be able to work with the people that we know in Leelanau County, and we should be able, very soon, they will be able to tell some really horrifying stories. And I think that my concern about that is that we have to be proactive. For example, because I think there's this thing that people are waiting for the whole thing to collapse, that it can't possibly be successful, and these people are idiots, and eventually the whole thing is going to blow up. I wouldn't go to the bank on that. And the thing that I think, if we can get ahead of it now, just use the food example. Okay, let's figure out what that impact is really going to be and how it's going to impact things locally. Then let's go out and talk to those people and ask them and get the information directly from them about what they think the impact is going to be, and then ask them if they're willing to tell their story. And so I think the local impact and the storytelling of the impacts is probably the most successful route, but it has to be done proactively, because if we wait for it actually to have impacted and actually have happened, we're going to have missed the opportunity. It's going to be too late.
I agree. These things are coming so fast. We need to start being fast ourselves. So, follow us on YouTube, and we have a YouTube channel. We have a Facebook page. We have Instagram, and we have Blue Sky. I pretty much post on it every single day. I posted we have a great video of our town hall, a short one that this guy, Chris Hens, made. And Chris is also going to be making a video of our event on April 5th, when we're out for our Hands Off event down the Government Center in Traverse. So anytime it's state or national, we work with Traverse. And when it's local, we work with you. So but I do think we need letters to the editor about all of these things. And Rob, is Rob still here? Rob, are you here, Rob?
No.
Well,
he had to leave.
Oh, okay. So Rob said that he wanted someone to be head of letters to the editor. And so I thought, great, he can do that. That would be wonderful. Anybody else have an idea they'd like to be in charge of? Go ahead, Doug.
I don't want to be in charge of it, but I want to pick up on what Rick just said. You know, Rick's got this book and he's page marked every cross reference between what Trump has done and what it means in the book. I think we should do a cross reference about everything Trump has done and what it means to Leelanau County.
Oh,
Every program that's cut, every food bank, every farmer. Those are the stories that I think will really make a difference, but we've got to track the cut and then the impact. And I believe that might begin to change the message. So Rick's absolutely on the right track, but we shouldn't be just cross-referencing the book. We should be cross-referencing the programs.
oh, that's excellent, excellent. Okay, Mickey says, wait a minute, Mickey. The current avoiding issues, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
I was just concerned that if we constantly talk about Trump, it's too easy to dismiss
Yeah.
for the people that we want to convince or encourage to think differently.
So we just
Yeah.
just do the cuts and how it affects people.
Yeah, or that it's the current administration, because there are a lot of people enabling this. It's not just one person.
Yeah, Mary Ann?
Yeah, I really like some of the suggestions I'm hearing, especially the last few. But one of the things I think we should all think about in messaging, messaging is key, right? Trump is a master at that. And they did a very nice job. And messaging doesn't necessarily mean that we have to give out a lot of information at once, but short messages, even 1 or 2 words, just phrases, something that everybody will read, not just within our group or within Indivisible. We don't have to inform each other. We know we're talking about this. Who are we? Who's our audience? And I just remember things like seeing different signs during the election about, Trump strong, Harris weak, that kind of a thing. Very simple messaging, but people remember it.
The more you can reduce the message in the verbiage, the greater the impact in what Marianne is saying. We had the opportunity to ride with a young Black man who was our Uber driver about a week ago in New Orleans. And it became apparent very quickly that he was a Trump voter, a rabid Trump voter. And his whole thing was Trump made things happen. 4 words. That was it. Right. Similar to this, what Marianne was talking about. We saw that verbiage on signs on Bodas Road. This to this, this to this. And so the simpler we can do that, in particular, Sam, if we go to something with the county, if we have an issue here, the more we can simplify it, the stronger our message will be.
Yeah, and even if people that are on a main road or whatever, people put up political signs. People are willing to put something in their front yard if it's a visible place, and just maybe a theme. We come up with something that is relating to what happens. About maybe Social Security is going to be the big thing coming. It's coming. It's right on us, right? What's going to happen with Social Security? What's going to happen with Medicare and Medicaid? What does that mean? Do people believe it? Have they heard it? We all know, we're informed, we're listening, we're reading, but not everybody is. So those are the people that we want to get at, right? So all I'm saying is we have to put our heads together and keep it simple.
Yeah. So what do you think about flags for Ukraine?
As far as putting up flags for Ukraine?
Is that simple, or is that not effective? It's
very simple. It sends the message, right? You know exactly, what people think. I think there are things, and it's maybe even working groups or something to sort of come up with different messages that could be scattered around the county, kind of thing, whether it's a sign, a flag, Maybe it's just a very simple letter to the editor with just a couple phrases, just to get people think like, oh, you know, or put an ad or something, or, you know, if we had an opportunity for somebody to get on a podcast, or definitely Facebook, definitely use social media, and X. I'm not an X, but let's go where the other people are. Let's not just stick with Blue Sky. I'm just trying to think about getting it away from where we're all comfortable and go where it's not comfortable and keeping it simple.
Let me drive it to something perhaps that happened a little while ago, but something extremely local. And that's where septic tanks had to be reviewed and assessed when a property was sold. Okay, you can boil something like that down to, you know, protect the environment and dirty septic systems or something like that. That's the simplicity. And that's local.
But see, that'll get somebody's attention.
It got your attention, didn't it?
No, actually, it took us almost 20 years to get a septic ordinance. The other team still doesn't think it's worth it.
That's an example, but I mean, the point is, you know, what we'll have people talking in a week from when they see it to say, oh gosh, I remember that sign, or I remember listening to this, or, you know, reading this on social media or whatever. It's just, you know, and somebody here made a comment about, you know, my mom raised me to be polite, and I'm one of those people too. But, you know, we just have to sort of just try and break out a little bit, and, you know, be real blunt and be real truthful, and trying to get people's attention. And I'm sad about what's going on, because people are really going to be hurt in a big time. They're going to lose their health care. They're going to lose, you know, Social Security. They're going to be reduced. There's no doubt about it. That's absolutely going to happen. And the people that are going to be hurting are, unfortunately, the most are probably going to be a lot of the Trump people and a lot of the MAGA group. And that's unfortunate. But I don't think people understood. I really and truly believe a lot of people didn't believe some of the warnings that I think that the Democratic Party was trying to put out. But I think the reason was that there wasn't concrete enough. And I think the message was not simple. And
people bought into and remembered the one word message.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our 2 cents.
Sorry.
Well, I think this has been great. Rick, are you there, Rick, anywhere?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
I'm right here.
I think this is such a great conversation. But we need more specific things. Jeannie, can you help us with that? As a person who leads groups?
I'm sorry, what are you asking me?
So it seems like we need actions for people to do. Should we just ask folks to come back with ideas that, like we just heard, like, okay, give us some short slogans that you think we could use. Give us what you'd like to write a letter to the editor about. Give us what you'd like to write a public comment about, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think having specific actions is really, really important. It also helps to have everything written down so we can see what the things are. And all of this is like it's like building a whole strategy. So individual actions are great. Even better to have a whole strategy like this book lays out.
Like this book lays out. Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'm not the person to be able to do that. But we will send out minutes from tonight. And we have a lot of wonderful brains on here. Kathy, anything else you would like to say about future actions? Bonnie?
I think I just also want to say that, part of what I've been hearing is stories about how individuals and groups are impacted. And so I think it's important for us to be looking for those stories and reaching out to people and letting folks know that we want to hear from them. We want you to post your stories. So a lot of people on here have stories about what they know about. And I think if we're telling people to tell their stories, that will help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I really appreciate the opportunity to have a session like this. All the ones that I've been able to participate in with Indivisible have been able to help me formulate more concisive words to get my thoughts together. I have some very, very dear friends around the country that they are so blinded with the Trump and Musk with what's going on, and they are bright, intelligent, educated, and this helps me, I think, listening to all of you and getting the points from Project 25 and expressing that to them and sharing a dialogue and wanting to know how and what they're thinking. Anyway, I just want to thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bonnie. Rick, do you have an assignment for us?
Well, my email is Rick, RICK NPT, which is Northport at Gmail. And I would love to hear any ideas. I think I'm thinking, should we keep moving through the book? I really like the idea of the impacts and keeping local impacts, because there's no question a lot of people in our county are going to be hurt. And I'm going to have to think about this a little bit, Sam, but the one thing I want everyone to know is how much I appreciate this, because it's been driving us crazy and we knew we needed help. And I think there were so many things said tonight that we're going to have to think carefully about. And, all I can say is thanks.
It has been completely wonderful hearing every single person's idea. It's like a cool drink of water on a hot day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bronwyn?
Yeah, I feel the same. I've learned a lot. I appreciate all of you and what you've had to say. What about if we think about or try to find 5 things that have happened to neighbors or people we know over the last week or so, and try to put those stories together? I mean, I can come up with a list of 3 right off the top of my head who've lost their jobs. So that's a thought or a possibility.
Wow. Thank you, Bronwyn. Ty?
Well, Rick posed the question, or maybe it was Karen, should we keep plodding through the book? And I don't know that we're ever going to be able to read the 990 pages, but this was a good start. And our assignment was just to read the first few pages. I would like to at least have Rick and Karen come back one more time with us after we really took a deep dive into the book, if they're willing.
Wait, one more time. I was thinking 3, 4, 5.
I would do that. I didn't I didn't want to scare them away.
Tom Peterson, did you want to say anything?
Ty, you can read all 922 pages. I did that. And it's a scary read. And I agree that if you put tabs on every page, pretty soon you got more tabs than you can lift up, because I don't do weightlifting anymore. And those tabs aren't very heavy. But yeah, we need to take a deep dive into this and see where we can bend this backwards on them locally, because that's where we have the power.
Yeah. Kathy, do you have any closing thoughts? I mean, Kathleen? No. Nancy? Nope. Marianne, Mickey, wait a minute. Richard? Richard, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay,
I'm here.
Yeah, gotcha.
I cannot read the whole book. Maybe we ought to split it up into sections and each give a book report or a chapter report to each other. That's one thought. Also, I still think we need to push to the middle. We're never going to convince a whole bunch of Republicans. They're just, it's a bell-shaped curve. I mean, we really are. This country is half Democratic and half Republican. Look how tight the race was among the people who voted. Who knows what the non-voters are. Some of them are Democrats who bailed this time around. And actually, I'm tired of hearing that Trump won the election. He didn't. It was 50.1% against Trump and 49.9% in favor of Trump. So yeah, I think if we want to get through the whole book, or people just scan and pick up the mark. I could not finish reading 43 pages of that. I had to put it down.
I know, it made my brain explode too.
I also think that when it comes to signs and slogans, we can all work on that and bring a bunch of examples, or at least I have some. Like, what about the eggs?
Okay.
There are never going to be lower egg prices.
Okay, any other closing thoughts? All right, so Rick, you're going to think about what you'd like folks to do, right?
Right, I am.
All right, and so you'll email me something. I'll email you the minutes from this. And thanks everybody for coming. It's a big task. We're all going crazy, and crazy loves other crazy. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.